a world where strength decides everything, Root was born with a skill no one wanted, guidance, a so-called worthless ability, mocked by adventurers, scorned by guilds, exploited by merchants. But while others laughed, they never saw what he truly carried. Guidance could sense danger before it struck. It could lead allies away from death itself. Yet instead of thanks, Root was betrayed, abandoned in the depths of the Emerald Dew Labyrinth, left to die. There, with his little sister Rona's face haunting his every thought, he made the choice no one else dared. He swallowed the forbidden obsidian stone, and the power inside him awakened. The skill they mocked began to twist and evolve, summoning shadow knights, unlocking paths no adventurer could see, granting him the strength to tear through dragons, spiders, even golems. Beside him stands Lillian, a sorceress with secrets of her own, tied to the Witch of the World Tree. With her, Root begins to carve a new legend, not as a burden, but as a force to be feared. They called his skill useless. They called him dead weight, but Root will prove them all wrong, because guidance was never weak. It was unstoppable. In a peaceful mountain area, two enormous beasts resembling rhinoceroses, called the Great Horned Ones, suddenly emerged. The presence of the creatures sent waves of terror through two individuals, their faces betraying alarm and confusion. One of them questioned internally, struggling to understand how such menacing beings could have appeared in this location. Before making the choice to escape to safety, the group found themselves in sudden danger. As they hurried away, a great horned one suddenly emerged, charging toward them with fury. In the vicinity, a different carriage rolled into view, transporting a band of adventurers. Without warning, one member of the group activated a special ability known as guidance. The sight exposes a whole group of massive horned one creatures gathered together. Utilizing this ability, the young man alerts the older couple traveling with him about the herd blocking their way, and recommends they choose a safer, though longer, detour to avoid danger. The woman conveys her heartfelt thanks, reassured that choosing him as their guide was wise, particularly now that monster sightings have become more frequent in the region. The young man shares that his ability to guide is what allows him to keep travelers safe and ensure their journey remains secure. Although her husband expressed his gratitude, the elderly merchant responded with a furious outburst, insisting that she refrain from showing any appreciation to the younger man. The merchant doubted the young man's trustworthiness, expressing skepticism about the existence of monsters. He brushed off the guidance skill as foolishness and accused the young man of fabricating stories. The young man reflects internally that people always respond this way because his abilities allow him to stop problems before they start, leaving everyone unaware of the true dangers he protects them from. At the same time, another adventurer approached the young man aggressively, seizing him and hurling insults, mocking him as the one burdened with a worthless skill. The focus moves to an explanation of the world's history, describing how magic stones mined from dungeons have become essential in daily life. The energy needed to illuminate entire cities comes from them. The resources used to craft weapons and armor, both crucial for everyday survival, came from these raw materials. The dungeons swarmed with dangerous creatures, so stepping inside was always a perilous gamble. This constant threat was the very reason magic stones carried such a high price. Because of this, those adventurers who possess the ability to defeat monsters are greatly respected by others. Individuals who possessed non-combat abilities often faced disdain, enduring harsh treatment as if they were worthless. Once they reached the city without trouble, the woman handed the boy his payment and expressed her gratitude for his help. Her husband, a merchant, responded with anger, forcefully knocking his hand aside so that coins tumbled to the ground, then accused him of causing a delay that let a competing trading company arrive at the market first. The merchant kept raising his voice, convinced that the shoppers in the market were already done with their purchases. He accused the young man of being both a coward and a cheat. The adventurers observed the unfolding events closely. One member of the group expressed frustration, thinking it would have been wiser for the merchant to trust them with the money rather than waste it on a scam. However, who led the group firmly disagreed with this suggestion. The merchant seemed poised for great success that day, admitted that his curiosity had prompted him to use his bird's eye skill, allowing him to survey the path that the young man had deliberately steered clear of. He spotted a massive group of mighty horned one creatures gathered in that area. indicating that the competing traders had not arrived in the city yet. Once it became clear that the young man's abilities were both genuine and impressive, walked over and addressed the other person as Root. He presented himself as the leader of the Steel Moon Party and reached out his hand, requesting Root's assistance in conquering a dungeon with his unique abilities. Root stood frozen in disbelief, his mind swirling with confusion as he tried to grasp why anyone would want his abilities, skills that everyone else dismissed as worthless. Took a seat at the table beside Root. Root started outlining his task, revealing that a large number of adventurers had attempted to explore a recently discovered dungeon named the Emerald Dew Labyrinth, but not a single one had made it back. He mentions that a note was received from an insider, reporting the discovery of a magical gem known as the Tears of the Emerald Dew. Root quickly realizes that most people think escaping the dungeon is far more difficult than entering it, and wholeheartedly agrees with this assessment. Gestured toward Root, emphasizing that moments like this highlighted the true value of his guidance abilities. Root came to understand that reasoning made sense. By relying on his own abilities, Root believed he could discover a secure path home. Assured the man that a substantial reward awaited him. The promise of 30 gold coins awaited him, but only if their mission proved successful. Root stared in disbelief at the sum before him, realizing it matched nearly half of what he earned in an entire year. He instantly considers how this money will greatly improve his sister's life. A surge of recollection washed over him, bringing back a distressing scene from earlier days when a woman harshly reprimanded and struck his sister. They insulted her, dismissing her as worthless and insignificant. She warned that if the girl failed to earn any money, she would be sold. Root intervenes, stepping in to prevent any further disturbance toward his sister, firmly requesting that she be left alone. The woman interrupts harshly, pointing out that she had been generous enough to take them in when they had no family. Root pleaded desperately, assuring that given a little more time, the debt would be repaid. The woman delivered her ultimate warning, making it clear that if the rent remained unpaid by month's end, she intended to sell his sister into slavery. The young Root, filled with apprehension, reluctantly agrees to the arrangement. He comes back and embraces his sister, offering comfort as he promises to protect her from ever experiencing that again. Root explains that his little sister, Rona, possesses what many refer to as a worthless skill. Their parents had lost their lives when creatures had surged out from a dungeon. The story shifts back to the current moment, unfolding within the depths of the dungeon. The Steel Moon team demonstrated remarkable expertise as they battled the monsters. A team member shouted at Root, demanding that he quicken his pace and remain at the back of the group. Then glanced at him with a smirk, making a sarcastic remark about whether Root had ever explored a dungeon before. Root offers an apology to the group, then turns to the youngest sorceress among them, inquiring whether she, too, belongs to the Steel Moon team. The sorceress reveals that she, too, is new to magic, having been discovered in the city, and she adds that helping novices train is included among the responsibilities of an adventurer. The sorceress confides her worries, admitting that she might slow the group down since she, too, is inexperienced in this situation. Root offered a warm smile and explained that he, too, was experiencing this for the first time. Hearing this, both of them began to laugh, their shared nerves easing in that moment. In another part of the dungeon, the Root adventurer kept muttering complaints, criticizing Root's ability as nothing more than the tactic of someone too afraid to face monsters, choosing instead to avoid danger and retreat. Overheard Root and reprimanded him harshly, reminding everyone that inviting Root had been his own decision. He emphasized the dangers of the return trip through the dungeon, pointing out that this part of the journey was the riskiest, particularly when the group's strength and magic were nearly spent. Instructed his teammate to avoid making statements that could create uncertainty during their journey, prompting the adventurer to quickly express regret for his words. Shifted his attention to Root, offering an apology for his team's actions and expressing that they were placing their full trust in him. Root experienced a sense of relief, imagining how much easier his work in the dungeons would be if every adventurer resembled, allowing him to concentrate without concern. The young sorceress felt the same way and showed her joy at discovering's kind nature, a sentiment that Root also shared. At last, the group arrives at a large, open chamber situated at the dungeon's far end. They discovered their objective, the famed magical gem known as the Tears of the Emerald Dew, which shone with a vivid, radiant light. The team stood in awe of the artifact's overwhelming flow of mana, its power radiating throughout the room. While one member marveled at this magical energy, another could not help but imagine the fortune that awaited them if they managed to sell such a treasure. Just as one of the group extended a hand toward the stone, Root's guidance ability triggered unexpectedly, alerting everyone to a sudden threat. Root urgently called out, halting their actions before anything could happen. Root cautioned the group that taking the magic stone would mean they could never come back. With a steady voice, inquires about the insights his ability has revealed to him. Root admits that his sight is somewhat blurry, yet he senses that the route they just traveled will soon cave in, cutting off any way back. Following a brief pause, caught the eye of the dark-haired sorceress standing beside him, and the two shared a glance filled with unspoken understanding. To everyone's astonishment, the sorceress unleashed a spell that sapped the magical energy from both Root and the young apprentice. Their energy was violently siphoned away, making them cry out in agony and surprise. The sorceress announces that the energy she has taken will make up for what the team used, signaling that the true challenge is about to start. Meanwhile, the sorceress summoned her remaining strength and unleashed a powerful spell, pouring all of her energy into the incantation. She cast a rapid enhancement spell on and the other warrior. Root cradled the unconscious young sorceress in his arms, his expression filled with shock as he demanded an explanation for their actions. In this moment, unveils his actual intentions, sharing that he had already learned about the dungeon's many traps from previous reports. The traps sapped both his energy and magical power, forcing him to come up with a strategy to get past them. To protect the group from hidden dangers, he came up with an idea involving a canary, believing the bird could alert them to any traps ahead. Who was a beginner in the art of magic, needed some time to recover her magical strength. He was confident that, together with these two companions, their chances of completing the mission would be secure. Root raised their voice at him, leveling accusations of betrayal, while responded with a chilly and insincere apology. He insisted that time was running out as his companion at last retrieved the magic stone. And his teammates gathered their things, getting ready to head out. Said goodbye to Root, expressing hope that if Root managed to make it through, they would meet again. At that moment, his companion remarked with biting sarcasm that survival was now impossible for their group, while the team's sorceress voiced her genuine appreciation for his impressive performance. While they made their escape, the ceiling of the tunnel started to give way, sending rocks crashing down and sealing the entrance entirely, just as Root's ability had foreseen. Root could hear the novice sorceress laughing in the distance, which made it clear that she had truly left them behind to face whatever would come next. Once the entrance caved in, Root was overwhelmed by hopelessness when he understood he was stuck with no way back, and his worries centered entirely on his sister Rona. Desperate for a way out, he silently begs his ability to show him how to stay alive. Summoning every ounce of his strength, he focused intently and triggered the power of guidance. The power guided him toward an enigmatic throne positioned at the center of the grand hall. Root stood in awe, hardly believing that a throne could exist in such a location. The instructions appeared before him, unmistakable in their clarity. He was to shatter the throne and draw the power from the enchanted obsidian stone into himself. Upon reaching the throne, Root discovers a mysterious stone infused with dark magic. As the young sorceress stirs from her slumber, she reacts with wide-eyed amazement, clearly surprised that such a black stone truly exists. The explanation revealed that magic stones were linked to the 5 primary elements, making the presence of a black stone unimaginable. Without warning, the ground trembled as debris shifted aside, revealing a massive green dragon rising from beneath the ruins. The young sorceress stared in disbelief when she saw a green dragon appear unexpectedly in that location. A thunderous roar erupted from the creature. The dragon charged toward the group, its intent clear and menacing. Root, driven by the thought of protecting his sister, realized he had to survive no matter what and quickly relied on his abilities to seek a way out. Despite his efforts, the system continued to display a single instruction: eliminate the throne and take in the power of the magic stone. Root's determination grew stronger when thoughts of his sister filled his mind. He understood that, in order to see her again, he had no choice but to trust the guidance of his skill and follow its directions if he wanted to survive. Although he remained uncertain about the method for absorbing the stone, the sorceress urgently commanded him to escape from the furious creature. The sorceress explained that her magic could guide them to safety. Meanwhile, Root focused on recalling the directions his own ability provided. Root understood that his abilities offered them a narrow possibility of making it through, yet he knew he couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Without hesitation, he swiftly places the black stone on his tongue and forces himself to swallow it. Watching him with growing concern, the sorceress urgently questions his actions. The green dragon swung its powerful tail in an attack, but Root threw himself in the way, using his own body as a shield. The force of the blow sent Root crashing to the ground, pain radiating through him. A notification materialized in front of him, announcing that the absorption of the obsidian magic stone had been successfully completed. A subsequent notification appeared, announcing the advancement of the skill and the lifting of limitations on the guidance ability. Root found himself pondering the implications of lifting the restrictions. Information about his skill's latest and more advanced powers steadily entered his mind. He is struck with amazement as he discovers that the guidance skill, now free from its previous restrictions, reveals its real strength. He gazes at the dragon standing before him, then shifts his determined eyes to his frightened companion, a newfound resolve shining in his expression. He chooses to place his full confidence in his newly enhanced ability. He decided to select a newly revealed power known as Subjugation Procedure Guidance. The skill informs him that it will lead him through each stage to overcome the green dragon. Filled with a surge of energy and optimism, Root confidently promises that he will come back safely. While the dragon itself to strike again, the skill activated, offering its initial guidance in battle. It directed him to evade the foe's assault by moving to the left. Still unsure, Root questioned internally why the skill was guiding him toward a heap of debris on his left side. The route on the right appeared to offer less danger and presented a simpler journey. With the dragon readying a powerful burst of flames, Root chooses to set aside his reasoning and rely completely on his newly advanced ability. He reached for his companion, calling her name as he guided her swiftly toward the debris. Just then, the dragon launched a fierce assault, obliterating the section on the right where Root had believed he would be protected. Root suddenly became aware, a surge of disbelief washing over him, that his unique ability had just spared them from a fate that would have meant certain death. He quickly observes that dangerous thorns are jutting from the floor, realizing that the whole space has been designed as a lethal trap. Gripped by panic, called out to Root, but he remained calm and concentrated on his skill, patiently anticipating what he needed to do next. New directions from the Magic Circle guidance instructed Root to open Magic Circle and trigger the magic release. Root found himself puzzled, uncertain about what the terms and magic release actually meant. Despite the uncertainty, a peculiar sense of assurance washes over him, convincing him that he is capable of fulfilling the command. He rested his hand on and triggered the skill. Suddenly, an intense wave of magical energy floods over her, stronger than anything she has ever felt in her life. Stood in awe of her newfound abilities, her curiosity growing as she wondered what she needed to do next. The response is delivered via magic chant guidance, a skill that informs her it will help her recite a powerful spell, allowing her to use all her magical strength against the dragon. Root instructed her to echo his exact words without deviation. Root started instructing her in a potent incantation, carefully guiding her through each word so she could harness extraordinary strength. Root's voice grew louder as he began a chant, calling upon fiery spirits to assemble and create the Inferno's breath, his words blending seamlessly with the natural pulse of existence. Soon after, echoed his incantation, her voice merging with his until they sounded like a single, unified resonance. Working as one, they gave a resolute order to ignite him and continue burning until the entire site was reduced to nothing but ashes. A torrent of blazing fire erupted from their spell, surging forward in a wide arc and striking the dragon head-on. A massive blast erupted unexpectedly, catching off guard. The dragon wavered unsteadily, clearly weakened by the force of the blow. Drained of energy and filled with fear, pleads desperately for him to run away. Root remains adamant, expressing unwavering confidence that victory over the threat is possible in this very moment. He instructs her, in a puzzling way, to use her magic against the ceiling. Adamantly rejected the idea, her voice rising in a desperate scream as she insisted she had no desire to die. Simultaneously, Root's thoughts were suddenly invaded by a vivid image of his sister, Rona. With newfound determination, he took hold of and promised her she would survive. He assures her that they will make it through as long as she follows his instructions without question. He encouraged her to have faith in him and to take swift action without delay. Persuaded by his determination, raised her hand and unleashed a fireball spell toward the ceiling. Both of them pause in anticipation, curious to discover what outcome will arise from Root's enigmatic scheme. A blazing ball of fire smashed into the ceiling, triggering a powerful avalanche of rocks. Debris tumbled down, burying the green dragon beneath the wreckage. As the debris cleared, the dragon was revealed, trapped beneath the fallen stones, while murmured in astonishment, hardly able to believe they had managed to overcome the beast. Their optimism quickly fades when Root's ability triggers once more, signaling that the subjugation process will resume. Both of them recoil in shock and fear. As the dragon emerged from beneath the debris, its injuries did nothing to calm its fury. Instead, it seemed even more enraged than before. Drained of all her magical energy and feeling hopeless, turned to Root with a desperate look, silently pleading for guidance on their next move. Was surprised to discover that Root was no longer by her side. Searching for him, she realized that he had fled from her. For a brief moment, she wonders if he has left her behind once more. Root picked up a stone and hurled it toward the dragon, hoping to catch its attention. The character then raises their voice in a taunting manner toward it. It turned out that he had consumed the black magic stone the creature had been protecting. Root boldly dared the creature to pursue him, making it clear that catching him was the only way to reclaim the stone. A perilous pursuit unfolds as he skillfully guides the creature toward the intended destination. Let out a terrified cry as she spotted the green dragon moving toward Root. Root evaded the dragon's strikes flawlessly, moving with precision as his abilities offered constant direction. After Root cleverly enticed the green dragon toward the hidden danger, the creature stumbled into the trap and was pierced by the waiting thorns, bringing about its defeat. Root appeared ready to collapse, completely worn out from exhaustion. The skill delivered its last set of directions, urging the user to guide the dragon toward the thorny snare and ensure it stumbled right into the trap. Root carried out the plan flawlessly, and as hurried toward him, concern etched across her face, she nearly lost her balance. Before she could hit the ground, Root reacted swiftly, reaching out to steady her just in time. A notification appeared, indicating that the green dragon had been successfully defeated. After overcoming the dungeon boss, Root relied on his special ability to locate the exit. Root's ability alerts him that the way out is now accessible. She instructs him to recover the enchanted stone from the remains of the dragon. A doorway opened in front of them, filling the space with warm, golden sunlight. Root appeared, steadying the weary, and together they experienced a wave of relief, knowing they had made it through and would soon be heading back home. After some time, Root regained consciousness and noticed that both he and were inside a moving carriage. A circle of knights, each clad in heavy armor and carrying weapons, closed in around them. A female knight with striking red hair called out to him, using his name. Informed him that they had fainted near the dungeon's entrance, and it was these very knights who had come to their aid. The knight announced her name as, and revealed she belonged to the Golden Lion Sword Party. She went on to explain that she and her companions had come to explore the dungeon, because every adventurer who ventured inside had failed to return. Approached Root, and with a cheerful expression, announcing her realization that they had already completed the dungeon. Root's attention is drawn to the enchanted stone he retrieved from the dragon's remains, while shares that has already confessed the whole truth to them, apologizing sincerely for the hardships they endured. Points out that the reason no adventurers have come back from the E-class dungeon is because an A-rank green dragon is lurking inside. She and her group conveyed deep respect for the impressive achievement and extended a formal invitation for them to become part of their team. Quietly confided in Root that she had hidden his talent from others to protect him from being exploited once more. Root turned down the offer with a humble smile, insisting that his abilities weren't that impressive. In response, reassured him, telling him to relax and consider the invitation after he had some time to rest. She suggests bringing him along to his, since it lies along their route to the capital city. Root gripped the magical stone he had received from the dragon, his mind filled with joy at the thought that this newfound treasure would finally allow him to settle his debts and cover his rent without any trouble. This ability would enable his sister Rona, who also possessed the shadow user skill often dismissed by others as worthless, to make use of her powers. She longed for the chance to experience an ordinary life at last. Broke into his dream, bringing urgent news that unstable dungeons, places where monsters more powerful than their usual category now appeared, had started showing up frequently. Root felt a wave of concern wash over him, recalling how a low-level dungeon had just appeared not far from his town. He had learned that some adventurers had gone inside, yet no word had come back about whether they managed to clear it. Without warning, one of Carrie's crew members let out a loud cry and gestured urgently toward the distant horizon. Thick plumes of smoke billowed upward from a town not far away. Root's eyes widened in shock as he recognized the ominous smoke billowing up from the direction of his. At the same time, in Root's, and his group faced Rona, who was Root's sister, and falsely informed her that her brother had lost his life inside the dungeon. Put on a convincing show of remorse, insisting that their opponent had been too powerful for them to handle, and explaining that they hadn't even managed to recover his possessions. He went on to explain that a specialized team would arrive shortly to seal off the dungeon, mentioning that her brother's remains might be discovered at that time. Then shifts the conversation to his true objective, bringing up the financial compensation that families receive when someone loses their life in a dungeon. Using the excuse that she was unfit to manage the paperwork, they justified their actions. He volunteers to handle the situation on his own. He simply requests that she provide her signature on a power of attorney form. The sorceress traveling with secretly marvels at his convincing performance, while their fellow warrior secretly plots to take the payment and escape from the town. He inquired about her father, who was known for his adventurous life, and wondered if she supported herself using the pension he left behind. Rona acknowledged that her father had once been a duelist, traveling to various locations to compete. She noticed that her brother constantly tried to imitate his actions. Insisted once more that she sign the documents, emphasizing that it was for her brother's benefit. Rona grew wary of his charming remarks, and resolved to rely on her unique ability to discover what he was really hiding. She called upon her shadow user ability, setting it into motion. In the town of fear spread quickly when monsters launched a sudden attack, causing the residents to scatter in terror as they desperately tried to escape. At the same time, noticed frantic screams coming from outside, and assumed that the stolen magic stones from the dungeon had disturbed the monsters. As his coworker quietly proposed slipping away, firmly declared that facing the monsters head-on would be the best way to distract them and support their plan. Rona is encouraged to hurry and put her signature on the documents. Rona, having exposed his deception with her shadow user ability, fixes him with a chilly stare and demands to know whether he truly plans on heading somewhere free of monsters. Could hardly believe it when he uncovered the details of his own scheme. Rona stood her ground with courage, challenging him by claiming he had deceived everyone about safeguarding the town and blaming him for her brother's death. Comes to the understanding that, With his strategy uncovered, he has no choice but to engage in battle. He instructed his soldiers to wreck the room, so that it would appear as though the monsters were responsible. After realizing she now knew the truth, they concluded that letting her live was no longer an option. At that moment, Root, Kyrie, and entered the ruined town. The moment Root spots the terrifying creatures, he cries out his sister's name in fear. He sprints as fast as he can in the direction of his home. He comes across Rona sprawled on the floor, gravely wounded and surrounded by a crimson pool of her own blood. He hurried over to her side and embraced her tightly, overwhelmed with relief to find her alive. In that moment, he made a silent vow to do everything he could to help her recover. Rona, with a joyful expression, reveals that she had believed he was no longer alive. Root pleads with urgency, hoping she will remain quiet and save her energy. She offered a faint smile, explaining that and his team had finally faced the consequences of their actions. As the words left her lips, she started to slip out of consciousness. Root wanted to understand what she meant, but his surroundings started to fade from her sight. A chill crept over her body, and though she tried to reach out to him, her voice sounded distant, as if he were slipping away. Although he pleaded frantically, insisting that he was right next to her, his words went unheard. She slipped into total unconsciousness, her final thoughts a desperate hope that he would survive. Root let out a cry of agony, his thoughts filled with doubt about the value of his extraordinary ability when it failed to protect his sister. His ability triggered, alerting him that receiving medical care was not possible in the current situation. Although it presents him with an unusual chance to keep her alive, he discovers that by joining their bodies and souls together, he can momentarily prolong her life through his own existence. The skill inquired whether he wanted to continue following the guidance for the survival path. Root did not hesitate. Tears streamed down his face as he promised he would do whatever it took to save her. The skill revealed that the green magic stone, which he had taken from the dragon, possessed the power to govern both regeneration and symbiosis, enabling the fusion to occur. The magic stone begins to glow as it comes to life. A brilliant light surrounded Rona. They started to unite both their souls and bodies into one. As the fusion unfolded, Root found himself immersed in his sister's mind, witnessing her memories firsthand. He watched as Rona called upon her shadow user abilities, bringing forth creatures from the darkness that launched an assault on and his companions. While he was deeply absorbed in recalling his sister's memories, two monsters began to move toward him. He witnesses the savage assault against her, and soon a monstrous figure turns its aggression toward him. His temper ignites when he discovers that has not only deceived him, but also set him up as a trap. He not only targeted his blameless sister, but also had the audacity to harm her. Once the fusion finished, the shadow user skill awakened inside Root. Blinded by fury, he vowed never to forgive for his actions. The story shifts back to the town square, where methodically defeats each monster in turn. Carefully planned her evenings, making sure each place was protected. Without warning, she notices Root standing in the middle of the wreckage, seemingly untouched by the chaos around him. She instructed him to leave the area and head to a designated safe zone, reassuring him that the team was nearly done eliminating the monsters. Root gazed intently at a display visible solely to him. He informed that he was about to embark on a journey with the goal of rescuing his sister. Pleaded to accompany him, promising that her assistance would be valuable, and he expressed his gratitude for her encouragement. Before departing, Root resolves to get back at the Steel Moon party. At that moment, his ability triggers, presenting him with guidance on how to defeat the Steel Moon party. 3 months had passed, and the bustling city of known for its adventurous spirit came into view. Gathered with his expanded group inside a bustling tavern, where they reveled in their latest victory and shared laughs at the expense of the local adventurers, whom they considered feeble. Root took seats at a table close to where Scroop had gathered. As observed the team, she noticed that more people had joined them over time, but their actions continued to reveal a clear lack of maturity. In the vicinity, a group of adventurers discussed the recent quest to defeat the infamous shadow web spider. The creature stalked its victims using unseen strands, transforming the whole valley into a place no one dared to enter. One of Loyal's supporters overheard the discussion and dismissed the dangers with a scoff, boasting that could easily take down the spider in a single strike. As he made his bold claim, he shoved past a person walking by without any regard. A towering man stood up from a nearby table after striking friend for accidentally running into him, then turned his attention to, wanting to know whether was the one in charge. Everyone inside the tavern immediately identified him as the head of the infamous White Wolf's Fang Party. The head of the White Wolf's Fang Party reprimanded, pointing out the misconduct of his subordinates, and suggesting he should keep them in line before considering a confrontation with a fabled beast. A quiet voice suggested that, unless the man set aside his pride during this pivotal time, his life could come to a tragic end. Stood up from the table, his face set in a smug expression. He announced, in a voice laced with chill and superiority, that he believed the moment for his summoning had finally arrived. Launched a swift assault on the leader, overpowering him with little effort and emerging victorious. The team pleaded with the leader, desperately urging him to abandon their own chief. He hurled the leader toward the teammates who had stepped forward to protect him. He remains triumphant, while his soldiers loudly repeat his name in celebration. Understood that had absorbed a great deal of strength from the enchanted stone, and doubted that Root would be able to defeat him in a head-on battle. Root maintained a calm and unwavering look in their eyes, showing quiet determination. He turned to, offered an apology, and explained that he required her assistance. Just then, his unique ability triggered, initiating the guidance for the subjugation of the Steel Moon. The focus moves to, and his group as they make their journey in a line of carriages. After completing every lucrative dungeon, it became clear that the moment had come to depart from the town. One of the group members wondered aloud whether their next stop would be the infamous Shadow Web Spider, but immediately dismissed the thought, insisting instead that they should tackle a different dungeon at random before departing. Proudly declares that his newfound abilities allow him to merge groups of minor foes into a single formidable opponent. As and his companions exchanged laughter and joked about their future pensions, Root and quietly observed them. Unnoticed by the group, Root and steered the carriage in silence, their presence blending seamlessly into the background. While and his companions made their way through the tight mountain pass, uncertainty arose among them about whether this was truly the path leading to the fabled dungeon hidden within the peaks. Without warning, confusion swept through the group as fear-filled cries echoed from every teammate. Invisible strands suddenly seized one of their companions. They hoisted him off the ground, while his terrified screams echoed through the air. A massive spider suddenly emerges into view. The team soon understood that they had wandered into the lair of the Shadow Web Spider. As chaos erupted, a voice rose above the crowd, urging everyone to retreat. At that moment, they noticed Root and nearby. Root and quickly stepped back from the carriage. His face brightened with immense relief as he silently offered gratitude to God for their survival. Root walked over and offered an apology, admitting their previous behavior had been childish. Filled with pride, begins to brag about the strength he has acquired from the magic stone, and mentions how his group has grown larger. She gives all the recognition to Root. With a forced grin, he volunteered to be the one to remove Root's head. Root replied with a frosty demeanor, making it clear he was glad to see that hadn't changed from the despicable person he always was. This meant he was now able to defeat his opponent ruthlessly. One of his followers pressed him to act quickly and defeat Root, hoping they could leave the area as soon as possible. He taunted Root by labeling him as the one with the worthless skill, and questioned whether Root expected to be abandoned by the group once more. On this occasion, there was even a threat to restrain him, making sure he would be unable to move at all. Root observes that the man brandishing the axe is oblivious to what is happening around him. The moment the man posed his question, curiosity flickered in his eyes as he tried to catch the response. Without warning, thin strands spun by the spider coiled tightly around his body, hoisting him above the ground while he shouted desperately to be released. As men cried out desperately while being ensnared by the spider's traps, turned to Root with fury in his eyes, demanding an explanation for Root's actions. Root's face displayed a calm, assured smile as he insisted on his innocence, yet he cautioned everyone to remain vigilant because the shadow web spider prowled these hunting grounds. Root clarified that the area was covered with hidden threads set as traps, and he pointed out that it was actually, and his team who had initially attempted to ambush and eliminate him. As Root caught sight of his wounded sister's image appearing before him, a surge of fury overwhelmed him, and he resolved that those responsible would face deadly consequences for their wrongdoing. The man, caught with no escape, let out frantic cries in hopes that someone would come to his aid. The sorceress representing's group moved ahead and assured him through her determined expression and gestures that she would rescue him without delay. The moment she moves forward, a sharp cry of pain escapes her. She realized too late that she had walked right into a trap designed to block all magic. Before she has a chance to react, a swarm of spiders descends upon her, overwhelming and capturing her while her terrified screams fill the air. The other team members stood frozen in fear as they witnessed a gruesome sight, a dismembered arm dropping to the ground, belonging to one of their allies who had been captured by the spiders. One member of the group urgently insisted that the situation was serious and that they were not responsible, then commanded everyone else to escape as quickly as possible. Observed as his soldiers scattered in fear, he then shifted his gaze toward Root, who inquired whether what they were experiencing was meant to be their retribution. Offered a sly grin as he lifted his hands in a gesture of surrender, silently suggesting that Root probably had more punishments waiting for them and must have carefully orchestrated every detail of the situation. He started to taunt Root by bringing up his sister Rona, calling her a kind sibling who always looked after her brother, and showed how much he regretted what had happened to her. He coldly remarked that her death could have been avoided if she had been as gullible as her brother. When those words reached Root's ears, he unsheathed his sword, flashed a cunning smile, feeling satisfied that things had turned out as he had hoped, since he believed that old resentments were best resolved in person. Ridiculed Root for wielding a sword beyond his skill and questioned whether Root truly believed that clumsy, beginner moves could defeat him. With a determined glare, silently promised to overpower his opponent. Root charged at, his laughter wild and unhinged. Raises his voice in frustration, realizing that his current abilities are not enough to seek justice for his sister. He insulted him, declaring that his skills were pointless and of no value, as he suddenly began a fierce assault. During the assault, Root maintains a composed demeanor as he moves. Managed to deflect Root's attack at the last moment, leaving him stunned by the force behind it. Disbelief filled as he tried to make sense of Root's sudden improvement, recalling how Root had seemed inexperienced in the dungeon. Now, however, Root's swift and precise actions reminded of a seasoned duelist. Root meets the situation with steady, unwavering eyes. He silently promises to ensure that experiences real anguish. His voice, sharp with anger, warned him not to let confidence get the better of him. After being empowered by the magic stone, he confidently claimed that he was now invincible. Gathered every ounce of his strength, releasing it in a brilliant, massive burst of energy. Called out to Root in terror, her voice filled with fear. Absorbed the blow right in front of, leaving her shocked, and then vanished without a trace. Without warning, the setting shifts, revealing the head of the White Wolf's Fang group restraining and using her as leverage against Root. Making his intentions clear, the leader insists he cannot be deceived into falling for any ambushes, ordering Root to disarm the traps and lead their group safely away. He threatened to take both of their lives and demanded a swift decision from him. The leader realized that killing his captives would not help him escape, as he would remain trapped and eventually fall prey to the spiders himself. Determined to survive, he decided to make Root show them the way out of the valley before disposing of them. He loudly urged Root to decide quickly, confidently declaring that no one could overcome him. He raised his weapon menacingly, making it clear that life hung by a thread. Just then, acting on Root's orders, a knight forged from living shadow emerged. The spectral warrior lunged at the leader, swiftly severing the hand that clutched the sword. Was set free while the leader froze in shock, confused by the sudden turn of events and the unexpected appearance of this new ally. He soon understood that the figure standing before him was actually a shadow knight. After the magic stone fell into his possession, its power slowly diminished, and the strength it had given him started to slip away. Root moved closer to the defenseless leader, making it clear that he intended to inflict upon him the same despair and pain that Rona had endured. With a swift motion of his sword, he struck his opponent and sent him crashing to the ground. He remains completely still on the ground. Root reached down and lifted the magic stone into their hand. The leader noticed the enormous spider coming closer, panic filling his face as he started to scream for mercy and confess his mistakes. The creature lunged at the man, launching its assault. Root offered comforting words too, assuring her that things would turn out fine. As the leader's life slipped away, he unleashed a furious tirade of curses, vowing that his brother would seek revenge and ensure that Root paid dearly for what had happened. He pleads for assistance while vanishing into the creature's jaws. Saw the terrifying sight unfold before her eyes, and understood that the creature responsible was the shadow web spider. After ending's life, Root rose to his feet and addressed the lingering presence of his sister, Rona, assuring her that he had finally brought justice to those who had caused her pain. He makes a solemn promise to rescue her, urgently warned him that they were trapped on all sides by spiders. Root shifted his attention toward the emerging danger, his abilities triggering to provide direction in overcoming the shadow web spider. Root announced that his quest for vengeance had come to an end, and now he set his sights on bringing an end to the tail of the giant spider. Cautioned Root that shadow web spiders were closing in on them from every side. He reassures, promising her that she has nothing to fear now that he is by her side. He launches into battle against the smaller spiders. However, observes that his strikes do not seem to harm them at all. Root recognized the strength of their adversaries and concluded that the moment had come to unleash a special tactic. Root retrieved the enchanted stone that once owned and identified it at once. Root then explained to her that had no further use for the artifact. Root gripped the magic stone tightly, sensing a surge of immense energy coursing through it. Guided by his skill, he triggered the tears of the emerald dew, drawing on its strength to amplify his own magical abilities. From within the webs, the spiders began their assault. Drawing upon the magic stone's energy, Root summons a surge of dark power, allowing it to flow over his sword and shroud the blade in swirling shadows. He blocked the spider's assaults with fierce swings of his sword, while cried out his name in alarm as she witnessed the scene. Root comes to understand that before he can fully use his power, he needs to become stronger himself. His unique ability triggered, directing him toward mastering dueling by embedding the most effective actions, experiences, and thought processes straight into his mind and muscles. His heart raced with fear as she understood they had wandered straight into the shadow web spider's den, a place likely riddled with hidden dangers. Once more, Root's guidance skill came to life, illuminating a secure route that led them safely past the hazardous terrain. They continue along the trail. The Shadow Knight swiftly intercepted an unexpected assault that had been directed at Root. Root shows his irritation at the endless, unseen strands that are spread all around him. He is caught off guard when cautions him about the arrival of an additional spider. Root gave a command, instructing the Shadow Knight to move forward. At the same time, became cornered by a looming spider. Fearful, she shouted at the creature to keep its distance and quickly unleashed a fireball spell in its direction. The spell struck the monster head-on, yet it showed no signs of damage. Shouted to Root with urgency, admitting that her attack was completely ineffective. Just as the spider prepares to leap toward her. Without warning, the Shadow Knight emerged and swiftly defeated the creature in one decisive blow. Stiffened in shock when the Shadow Knight appeared out of nowhere, his timely arrival rescuing her from danger. Gazed at her rescuer, her eyes filled with gratitude as she expressed heartfelt thanks to the Shadow Knight, relief evident in her voice. Root called out too, announcing that the true fight was just starting. Just then, the enormous mother spider made her entrance, lowering herself from above as her offspring clung tightly to her back. Root informed that he would require her assistance moving forward, and without hesitation, she accepted. Root's ability triggered once more, providing magic circle guidance, a power that guided the magic within its body along the best possible route. This let her push her magical strength past anything she had ever reached before. Root informed her that her magical abilities had finally awakened, then commanded her to unleash her full strength against the mother spider. Nodded in agreement and unleashed a powerful fireball spell, sending a tremendous blast that struck the mother spider with a fiery explosion. Believed she had achieved her goal and expressed her admiration for Root's impressive actions. She stands frozen in disbelief as the smoke drifts away, revealing the mother spider emerging from the flames without a single injury. Root assured her that this was sufficient, clarifying that there had never been any intention to hurt her. Root finally unveiled his real intentions. His goal had been to destroy every spiderweb spread throughout the area and to set her wings ablaze. After clearing away every barrier in his path, he was finally able to concentrate fully on launching his assault. Gazed at the unfolding events, her eyes wide with shock, silently thinking to herself how impossible it all seemed. Root spoke directly to the mother spider, making it clear that he bore her no ill will. Despite this, he explained that removing her was necessary for him to reach his objective. Root charged at her, his attention fixed solely on his target. A colossal sword swing, brimming with dark energy, surged forward. With a single rapid strike, the massive creature falls as the attack tears through its body, ending its life instantly. Froze in disbelief, her eyes wide as she marveled at how easily he had taken down an A-rank monster with just one strike. Considered telling the guild about their accomplishment, confident that such news would earn them a substantial reward. However, before she could say more, she realized that Root was completely worn out, collapsing to his knees from exhaustion. Root smiled warmly, assuring her that such an event would never occur because he was focused on a different purpose and had no intention of going back to the city. He goes on to mention that he has also acquired something valuable. Root carefully removes a violet shadow stone from the spider's remains, a unique magical gem capable of hiding any creature's existence from the world. Instantly knows what it is. She suddenly understood that the spider had been using the object to spin its hidden webs. Root informed that he intended to hold onto the stone as a keepsake. He then explained that their journey would continue to their next stop, where they would seek out the individual capable of saving Rona. Eyes widened in shock as Root unveiled her true identity, introducing herself as the Witch of the World Tree. His expression transformed with surprise as soon as she heard the name. She discloses that is actually her mother. A quiet hush settles over the area for several moments. Her voice trembling with fear, confided in Root about her mother's frightening nature, insisting that there was no way her mother would ever share her power with anyone. She pleads with him to pause at this spot and search for a different route. Root declined the offer, clarifying that his guidance power had allowed him to examine every potential outcome, and each path that might rescue his sister ended up pointing directly to. Expressed her appreciation for having her life saved, but she made it clear that she would leave him at this point if he was determined to seek out her mother. In a surge of panic, Root seizes her arm, pleading earnestly for her to stay by his side. He acknowledged to himself that rescuing his sister would be impossible unless she was there to help. Feels a wave of emotion wash over her as his earnest request touches her heart. She questioned internally why she always found herself giving in so easily to these kinds of requests. Root expressed gratitude to her, then clarified that only with her there could be any communication with. He wondered aloud why, as her own daughter, she seemed so fearful of her. He reassures her that speaking is not necessary unless she feels comfortable doing so. Made up her mind to clarify things for him, she started recounting how had brought 3 daughters into existence, each born from the fruit of the world tree, so they could one day take her place. From the moment she entered the world, the firstborn daughter demonstrated an unparalleled command of magic. Her extraordinary talent for manipulating weather and summoning storms earned her the title of Storm Witch among those who knew her. Floria, the family's second daughter, became renowned for her expertise in a unique branch of alchemy. Her remarkable talent for crafting numerous golems earned her the title of Soul Forging Witch. carried on with her tale, sharing how the names of her sisters, the Storm Witch and the Soul-Forging Witch, were often spoken in hushed tones filled with respect. She revealed that, unlike them, her own magic was weak, and the only spell she could manage involved the fire element. Lily's mind drifted to a moment from 2 years earlier, when her sister's voice echoed through their home, loudly announcing that there was no more wine and urgently calling for Lily's help. Rushed along with a big pillow in her arms, assuring her older sister that she would be there soon. However, she collided with an obstacle and tumbled to the ground. She rose to her feet and noticed her second sister, Floria, beside one of her golems. The golem offered a gentle reminder, cautioning her about the dangers of running without watching where she was going. Expressed her gratitude to her sister, appreciating her concern. Raised her voice once more, her impatience growing as she questioned how much longer intended to keep her waiting. Expressed her regret and assured everyone that she would arrive without delay. Floria walked over too, and gently advised her against performing tasks that were typically assigned to the household staff. At the same time, a golem served by filling her glass with wine. Accepted the glass, her lips curling into a sarcastic smile as she observed that the golem seemed to be proving itself more helpful than Lily ever had. The speaker then made a harsh remark, suggesting with cold indifference that it might be better if the one who failed simply vanished before long. Appeared visibly shaken, but Floria offered comfort, encouraging her to ignore remarks and reminding her that she was not a failure. Felt a surge of emotion as she listened to the kind words. Floria explained to her that she was given a crucial responsibility, evaluating how sturdy the golems were. Barely had time to process the situation before Floria seized her hand and pulled her outdoors, insisting that the interior was far too crowded. Floria forcefully pushed, causing her to fall at the feet of a towering golem. Her voice, strained with hurt, questioned the reason behind the other person's actions. Floria explained that their mother was now the sole companion remaining with them in the world tree. It was only natural for witches to experiment with the things they brought into existence. She issued a chilly warning too, advising caution since the golem had not been trained to regulate its power. The golem lunged at, prompting her to raise her guard and prepare to fight back. She raised her hand and summoned a swirling ball of fire, launching it forward with a burst of energy. The massive golem's body showed only a faint wisp of smoke where the attack had landed. From afar, the two sisters observed the scene. Floria noted with satisfaction that the conclusion had turned out well. In contrast, remarked that the outcome was only due to Lily's lack of strength. His eyes lit up with excitement as she eagerly requested to join the fight as well. Floria shook her head and clarified that the golem's build was never meant to endure the force of her sister's flames. Kept sending out small bursts of fire, each flame flickering weakly as she tried again and again. Observed that her magical abilities were not very strong. Ultimately, the golem ceased, who was worn out from the struggle. She was unable to do anything except cry out desperately, hoping her two sisters would come to her aid. The echoes of previous moments lingered as announced that she could no longer hold back her emotions. The character unleashed a formidable magic known as Summon Thunder Emperor. A powerful surge of electricity erupted, obliterating the golem until nothing remained but a pile of dust. Floria raised her voice at her sister, insisting that she stop damaging her toys, while shot back that Floria should build sturdier golems if she didn't want them broken. Without warning, a commanding voice interrupted and demanded silence. Their mother stepped into view and reminded them that while they could continue playing, they needed to lower their voices and avoid creating chaos in the garden. Both sisters quickly expressed their regret. Floria assures everyone that she will tidy up the area right away. Gazed at the shattered remains of the golem, dismissing it as nothing more than worthless debris. He turned his gaze toward and insulted her by calling her trash. She instructs that both of them be gotten rid of at once, making it clear that has outlived her usefulness to her. Once the confrontation ended, both sisters loomed over as she lay helpless on the floor. With an icy expression, Floria informed that their mother had no further use for her, then carelessly cast her aside. Feels a surge of frustration wash over her, weighed down by a heavy sense of sorrow. Floria walked up too, who stood frozen in surprise, and suggested that could contribute to her research once more. Floria admits that she has been curious for a while about experimenting with humans as ingredients in her golem creations. His face pales as she stares at the menacing golem, fear gripping her at the sight. Reminded Floria that their mother had strictly forbidden them from hurting humans. In response, Floria argued that since their mother had once called her trash, she didn't see herself as human and believed the rule didn't apply to her. Listens to the suggestion and can't help but be entertained by it. With excitement, the speaker agreed and thought that if transformed into a golem, she could at last serve a real purpose. The two sisters walked up too and informed her that she was about to begin a new life. Collapses in tears, desperately pleading with the others to assist her. She cried out desperately, insisting that she wanted to live. Her sisters stared at her quietly while she shook with fear in their presence. Lets out a sudden sigh, making it clear that her enthusiasm has faded. She explained to Floria that her suggestion had been made with Floria's best interests at heart. Turning to, she demanded that leave and vanish from sight. Without waiting for a response, she departed with her sister. Floria felt let down, having believed that had the potential to be the most powerful golem. The memory faded, leaving on her knees, desperately pleading for mercy. The narrative shifts back to the present moment, showing Root and seated beside a carriage. Root reflects on how her family's circumstances were harsh and tangled. Following a brief pause, he wondered aloud whether she truly intended to offer her assistance. Announced her choice, explaining that because Root had once saved her, she felt compelled to return the favor and assist him. Root recognized the strength in her determination and realized he needed to match her resolve. He promised to share all the details about his intentions and powers with her. Unable to hide her excitement, eagerly agreed, confessing that her curiosity had been overwhelming. Root started to clarify his intentions, revealing that he aimed to rescue Rona and that his skills included guidance and shadow weaver. He explained that, using the magic stone of the green dragon, he had fused Rona, who had been on the brink of death, into his own body. By merging with her, he gained the power she possessed. Wondered aloud whether the Shadow Knight belonged to Rona, prompting Root to clarify that while the ability was indeed hers, it was not completely under her control. He clarified that the first version of the Shadow Weaver power let her control only her own shadow, which he once thought was a skill with no combat use and little value. He explained that it was his own skill and guidance that had revealed to him the proper method for wielding Shadow Weaver. Root proceeded with his explanation, mentioning that the shadow possessed the ability to transform into any form it wished. By picturing his father, a man devoted to dualism, he found the inspiration to bring the Shadow Knight to life. He notes that Rona's kind nature could make it hard for her to picture situations like this. Root explains that when the guidance ability is used to steer the Shadow Knight's movements, the knight is able to strike at foes on its own. Gazed in awe, remarking that the technique was something only Root was capable of mastering. However, Root explained that there was a drawback. He hadn't been able to fully inherit the complete powers of the Shadow Weaver. Wondered aloud about the guidance ability, having always believed it was only meant for discovering secure routes. The sudden arrival of a massive, horned beast brings their discussion to a halt. Root considers the moment to be ideal. He chooses to demonstrate his power to, in a hands-on way, knowing that their journey to will be filled with peril. His ability triggered the guidance for the subjugation process, focusing on the target known as Great Horned. The skill compels him to activate Shadow Weaver, allowing him to slip away from the enemy's strike. Root informed that the creature's main tactic was to rush at its opponents, using its horn as a weapon. Its skin was so resilient that ordinary strikes could not leave a mark on it. However, the creature's assault moves in a straight line and lacks complexity. Root swiftly evaded the creature's strike, relying on his expertise to trigger the Shadow Weaver ability. They moved together, launching an attack aimed at the monster's advancing feet all at once. Root clarifies that once the monster begins its charge, it is unable to alter its path. The focus shifted to targeting the creature's front legs. Applying too much force would cause it to become unstable and tip over without much effort. Root proceeded to describe the last step, noting that the creature's underbelly was much more vulnerable than its thick exterior, and could be effortlessly stabbed with a sword. His ability guides him to strike at the vulnerable spot that has been revealed. Root defeated the monster in battle. Once the fight ended, he promised that he would give her a thorough explanation of the guidance skill. Nodded eagerly, showing her willingness to hear what he had to say. He began recounting how everything began the moment he accidentally swallowed the magic vortex long ago, an event that triggered the transformation of his power. Next, he revealed to her the skill activation window, normally kept secret from everyone else, and clarified that this screen served as the main interface for his guidance ability. Root went on to explain that what they were witnessing was the evolved form of the guidance ability. The volume of information available from it has grown over time. He provided examples, illustrating how magic chant guidance could lead him to discover a powerful spell, similar to their battle with the dragon. He also clarified that magic circle guidance had the ability to awaken hidden magical strength by directing the movement of magic inside a person's body. Comes to understand that her ability to wield such strong magic stems from this very reason, and she silently acknowledges Root for making it possible. Root gently interrupted her misunderstanding, clarifying that the skill simply releases abilities a person already has, rather than generating new strength from nothing. He explained to her that the incredible strength she had shown truly belonged to her. He revealed that she carried the magic of An, a gift passed down from her mother, who was known as the Witch of the World Tree. Root spoke with conviction, assuring her that she possessed worth and carried the legacy of her mother's magic within herself. His heart swelled with emotion as his words touched her deeply, and a gentle smile appeared on her face while tears shimmered in her eyes. Wondered aloud whether the guidance ability had revealed to Root that possessed the power to heal Rona, and Root affirmed that it had. Marvels at the flexibility of the skill, yet Root clarifies that its usefulness is more limited than it first appears. He characterizes it as an analytical skill that resembles a divine revelation. Listens with wide-eyed wonder as he explains the details of this ability. The system examines the surroundings, picking up on details and influences that he may overlook on his own. She then steers him toward the best possible answer, making it seem like he has just discovered something important. Root acknowledges that success is uncertain when it comes to saving Rona, yet he feels confident that is the most capable person for the task. He emphasizes once again that connecting with her is only possible if, as her daughter, is there. Felt a profound sense of gratitude as she expressed that, despite being labeled as worthless her entire life, she would willingly assist him in any way she could since he had rescued her. Root expressed his heartfelt gratitude to her, admitting that he owed her a great debt. While journeying in the carriage, his eyes lit up with excitement as she pointed out the world tree coming into view. Root points out that even though the destination can be seen, traveling there will still require several hours. The pair observed the towering tree, marveling at its impressive size. Shared that the ancient tree had stood for more than 2 millennia and continued to grow even now. Without warning, Root spots a thin column of smoke curling up in the distance. His heart sinks as she suddenly understands that a village lies in the direction she's looking. A massive, oddly formed golem rampaged through the village, launching a sudden and fierce assault on its unsuspecting inhabitants. A local man and woman attempted to drive the threat away. The golem lunged at the man, but he quickly moved out of the way, avoiding the blow. The man swung his sword at the creature, yet his strike failed to cause any harm. The woman unleashed an intense burst of flames, summoning a powerful fireball through her magic. The man questions in his mind whether or not she managed to achieve her goal. The golem stepped out of the swirling smoke without a scratch, untouched by the attack. From nearby, a woman's recognizable voice remarked that the resilience of this magic had already been proven before. The golem, now echoing Floria's voice, assures everyone that the villagers' attempts to fight back will have no effect. The woman inquires about the reason for his visit. The golem responds by assuring that he has no desire to disrupt the lives of humans. However, just a handful of magic-using humans are required to serve as ingredients in crafting golems. At that instant, Root steps in to interrupt. A magical arrow flew from her bow, striking the golem. The golem grumbled about the persistent discomfort it felt whenever others disrupted its tasks. Root's ability revealed that the figure before them was merely a clay doll, not the actual foe they were seeking. Through the golem's eyes, Floria observed Root and silently scorned him, thinking of him as nothing more than a useless pest for getting involved. The golem charges at Root, moving with astonishing swiftness. Let out a sharp scream, trying to alert him to the danger, but Root calmly reassured her, telling her there was nothing to fear. Root moved swiftly, evading the strike without effort before slicing through the golem in one decisive motion. Floria, speaking through the golem, expressed her surprise at how effortlessly he had managed to divide it in two. As the battle continued, the golem's damaged arm began to reform, twisting into a mass of writhing tentacles. Floria turned her attention to Root, remarking that he seemed to have potential. Root responds in a detached manner, making it clear that he has no interest in playing with dolls. Floria revealed her disappointment, admitting she had hoped they would grow into close friends. While she was still talking, the golem suddenly struck from behind Root, prompting to cry out in alarm to alert him. The golem halted abruptly upon hearing speak, then slowly shifted its gaze in her direction. Floria emerged from within the golem, politely excusing herself as she acted as though she had only just noticed by coincidence. She walks toward the other girl, pretending to be cheerful. She wondered whether Lily had come back to her. Floria walked over too and expressed her regret for her previous behavior, assuring that she wished she had acted differently. Touched by Floria's sincerity, softly called her sister's name, Flo. Floria's features twisted into a menacing grin, as she informed of her ability to transform her into an even grander golem. She let out a laugh and revealed that she had only been joking. Floria kept up her act, slipping her arm around shoulders and insisting that ever since she walked away, she had been plagued by regret. Floria expressed her regret too, and gradually started to trust her sincerity. Floria confides that her real regret stems from her concern over someone whom she sees as having no purpose, existing in the world. There was a chance it could damage how others viewed her sister. With an icy expression, she admitted that what truly haunted her was failing to finish her off when she had the chance. Root rose to his feet and faced Floria, his expression serious as he made it clear that he and were too pressed for time to indulge in her distractions. Floria forced a smile, her expression laced with mock surprise, and remarked that she assumed he'd have all the time he wanted while spending his days with people like. His face flushes with guilt as she quietly expresses her regret. Root advises her against it. He turned to Floria, making it clear that anyone who failed to recognize worth was acting foolishly. Floria grows furious at the offensive remark. Root launched another assault on the golem and managed to slice through it. He explained that the true threat was not the golem. Floria let out a dismissive laugh, pointing out that golems could always be brought back to life, no matter how many times they were destroyed. She watches in shock as the golem falls to the ground and remains motionless. Root revealed that he had relied on the guidance of a magic circle to trace the current of magic powering the golem. By severing this connection, he successfully stopped the golem from restoring itself. Root pointed out to Floria that she appeared to be the one with a poor memory, stressing again that he wasn't interested in playing along with her antics. In response, Floria's temper flared as she yelled at him, demanding that he keep quiet. Overcome by fury, Floria caused the earth to tremble as an enormous and fearsome golem emerged at her command. The character promises that this impressive golem will completely defeat their enemies. The massive golem launched an assault. Turned to Root, wondering if he could handle the threat the same way he had dealt with the last one. However, Root confessed that his power by itself would not be sufficient to halt the advance of the enormous golem. He turns to, seeking her assistance. She encourages her to release her magic and destroy it with a powerful attack. While herself, Root abruptly called out, urging her to halt, having just realized that a person was imprisoned within the golem's core. Root remarked inwardly about her sister's twisted sense of humor. Floria protested against being labeled as ill, insisting instead that she was compassionate. He believed that nothing brought more happiness than existing, serving her purpose as her golem. Recalled that she once intended to use humans as ingredients for crafting golems. Root decided to alter their strategy, informing of his intention to rescue the individual imprisoned within the golem. He instructed her to strike with her finishing move right after he completed the rescue. Protested, insisting she couldn't face the challenge by herself. Root, however, offered reassurance, pointing out that she had already demonstrated her magical abilities twice before. He expresses confidence in her, letting her know that she is now capable of accomplishing it on her own. Root charged at the golem, drawing on the power of his shadow ability. The Shadow Knight appeared from the darkness, skillfully striking and severing the golem's hand. Floria observed the situation with great respect, noting to herself how rare and impressive his talent was. As the golem started to heal itself, its shape twisted into something even more terrifying than before. Watching this transformation, Floria grinned, considering this an ideal opportunity to test just how tough the creature could be. The newly altered golem launched an assault. The Shadow Knight steps forward and intercepts the attack. Root defended himself against the creature's fierce assaults, skillfully wielding the power of his shadow abilities. Root managed to find and approach the woman he had previously rescued from within the core. He raised his voice declaring that it was now her time to act, and commanded her to eliminate the golem. Stands motionless, paralyzed by the weight of her insecurities built up over the years. Overwhelmed, she cries out that she is incapable and insists that the task before her is beyond her reach. Root shielded the unconscious woman from harm. He kept urging onward, reminding her of the sensation when magic coursed through her veins. From afar, Floria lets out a dismissive scoff, her mind filled with doubts about what someone like could possibly accomplish. Root raised her voice once more, urging to remember that the extraordinary power of an resided within her. Gathers her strength and quietly assures herself that she is capable of succeeding. Floria persisted in her harsh treatment, demanding that the girl behave as if she were worthless and remain motionless, never daring to step out of line. Root's reassuring message, telling she was not worthless, lingered in her thoughts and shattered the emotional restraints that had held her captive for so long. Overcome by newfound strength, shouted out her conviction that she was not trash. A massive surge of magical energy bursts from her, taking the shape of blazing flames. Softly recited the potent incantation that Root had once passed down to her. Meanwhile, Root stood by her side, offering words of reassurance and expressing confidence in its abilities, declaring that she already possessed the strength of an. Floria froze in disbelief, her mind racing to figure out the source of the overwhelming magical energy surrounding her. Finished casting the spell, commanding the fire to consume all in its path until nothing remained but ashes. She released a powerful stream of fire from her mouth. Once the spell was complete, rose to her feet, breathing heavily from the effort. She firmly announced her determination to never allow anyone to insult her by calling her trash again. As the haze faded, Floria emerged, her expression twisted in fury at the sight of her shattered golem. She stared at, her eyes wide with shock, silently demanding an explanation for what was happening. Root proceeded to clarify to Floria that the display she had just witnessed revealed the real extent of its abilities. He suggests that her body might have been working to manage the overwhelming magic she was born with, keeping it in check so it wouldn't spiral beyond control. Previously, her weakness had been evident for this very reason. Upon hearing this, Floria became furious, refusing to accept the explanation. Overcome by anger, she shouted at Root, demanding silence and insisting he stop speaking such nonsense. She frantically asserts her authority as the older sister, declaring that if she calls Lily worthless, then it must be true. Feels pain after hearing what her sister said. At last, she mustered the courage to confront her, pleading for the torment to end and firmly announcing her independence, insisting she would no longer be treated like a puppet. She explains to her sister that she has chosen to be present by her own decision. She cautioned her sister that any interference would be met with swift confrontation, making it clear that their familial bond would not prevent her from standing her ground. After facing, Floria regains her composure briefly and pivots away. She admits she has overstepped her bounds and expresses regret, acknowledging that, as elder sister, she ought to feel proud of progress. She walked over to her sister, expressing her happiness at seeing how much her sister had matured. Feels a surge of emotion and quietly utters her sister's name. However, the very next instant, Floria's gaze is once again filled with a deadly resolve. Without warning, she lunged at her target, yelling her intent to rip the girl apart and use her remains to create the most powerful golem of all. Root steps in just in time, preventing her strike from landing. He informed of the necessity to get rid of Floria, and although she hesitated, she ultimately agreed with determination. Floria let out a dismissive laugh, clearly doubting that anyone stood a chance against her. She cautioned them against becoming overconfident after overcoming an ordinary golem, then charged in their direction. She aimed an attack in his direction, yet Root swiftly evaded it. A signal was introduced from the Root. Together, he and coordinated their assault, with unleashing a massive fireball as part of their combined attack. A force swept over Floria, surrounding her on all sides. Let out a joyful scream, convinced that her efforts had finally paid off. Floria stepped out of the fire completely unharmed, her expression mocking as she questioned her sister's belief that such an attack could actually hurt her. His irritation grew, yet Root calmly explained that he never believed the assault would work. The assault had merely served as a distraction. Without warning, the Shadow Knight materialized behind Floria. The character strikes with immense force. Floria expresses her disapproval, believing that launching a surprise attack does not align with the honor expected of a knight. The Shadow Knight broke apart, transforming into swirling darkness that coiled around Floria and held her tightly. Unaware of the situation unfolding around her, she fights desperately against forces she cannot comprehend. She realizes that they have managed to get away, and the reality of it leaves her feeling bitter. As Floria's anger took over, her body started to change, sprouting enormous, beast-like arms and legs. She shrieks wildly, insisting that they reveal themselves so she can rip them apart. Root and the woman they had saved crouched together in a concealed spot nearby. Unease filled the rescued woman's voice as she confessed her fear that someone might discover their hiding place. Root offers her comfort, explaining that the process will require patience. Floria, caught halfway through her transformation, stood atop a rooftop, her eyes scanning the surroundings in search of the others. She guessed they couldn't have traveled very far before her eyes landed on them. With a sharp edge in her thoughts, she criticized choices in partners, finding Root's method of ambushing and then fleeing utterly disgraceful. With a voice as cold as ice, she revealed her next move. Her intention was to blind by taking her eyes and silence her forever by cutting her throat, ensuring would never see or speak again. Floria insisted that golems were better off without their own desires, believing that ought to exist solely as her puppet. Before she managed to locate them, a barrage of enchanted arrows struck her, their sharp points tearing through her body. The force sent her sprawling onto the ground. Root turned their attention toward where the attack had come from, and Root immediately identified the knights belonging to the royal capital. The knight commander announced that they had successfully discovered where the only forging witch could be found. Floria, now changed, slowly got to her feet and reached for the arrow lodged in her body. As she pulled it free, she couldn't help but question who could have launched such an attack against her. A haired woman in knight's armor commanded the archers, instructing them to unleash the powerful Flame Emperor spell. The archers their bows, each one steadying themselves for the task ahead. A barrage of arrows, their tips ablaze with fire, shot through the air. Floria felt the impact directly. Without hesitation, the knight commander unleashes the power of the Thunder Emperor spell. He hurried toward Floria, who glared at him with disdain, insulting his humanity and condemning his deceitful ways. Everything that had unfolded was orchestrated by Root, following the guidance of his mysterious ability. This power had alerted him to the fact that knights from the royal capital were on their way to save Alsace, prompting Root to seize the chance to conceal himself. The same skill had foreseen that Floria would ascend to a vantage point in her search, making her visible to the knights and leaving her vulnerable to capture. The Knight Commander approaches Floria and initiates an interaction with her. With one swift motion, he sliced her body cleanly in two. Floria, feeling irritated, lashes out at the Knight Commander by striking with her tentacles. Just as she reaches out, a surge of icy power strikes her, causing her to break apart and vanish before making contact. Following the female knight's fatal attack, she came to the startling revelation that the form she had shattered with her ice arrow was merely a decoy, and not the true body of the soul-forging witch. Floria is labeled a monster. The Knight Commander nodded, validating her doubts by revealing that the creature had simply been a golem. The female knight felt a sense of unease, questioning the witch's reasons for targeting people living close to the villages. The haired knight explained to her that numerous neighboring towns had suffered damage, with both the Storm Witch and the Soul-Forging Witch being blamed for the destruction. The female knight thinks the situation is unusual. The commander noted that while the World Tree Witches were known for their fiery tempers, they typically refrained from attacking unless someone ventured too close to the World Tree itself. The female knight explained that the World Tree held many important resources that were highly beneficial to people, and this was the main reason why so many adventurers were drawn to it. There were medicinal herbs present, each capable of healing even the most severe illnesses. Despite its allure, the tree remains under strict guard by the witches. Any explorer who had attempted to enter before had also faced the same fate. The individual's life was cut short by a heartbreaking fate. The commander ended his address by recalling a well-known saying from the area, one that perfectly captured the moment. He reminded everyone that it was wise to observe the World Tree from a distance, because danger remained dormant as long as no one ventured too near. While they remained hidden, explained to Root that her mother had always taught them to avoid the villages. She felt puzzled as she tried to figure out what might have occurred within the World Tree that would cause her sister Floria to behave so strangely. At the same time, the royal capital knights gathered to talk about recent events. Their commander brought up the troubling news that they had not heard from their fellow knight, Alsace, since he left to look into the matter. The knights suspected that Alsace had been captured by the witch. The haired woman in shining armor came to a firm conclusion that no further lives should be lost. With determination, she announced her intention to bring the World Tree Witch under control. Root cuts into their conversation, halting whatever they were discussing. He inquired whether they were searching for an individual called, then proceeded to present the person he had rescued. The female knight cast a healing spell over Alsace, channeling restorative magic to mend his wounds. The female knight opened her eyes and expressed her gratitude to the other female knight for offering assistance. When Alsace regained consciousness, she turned to the female knight for an explanation about recent events. In response, the knight gestured toward Root and clarifying that it was those two who had recounted the details to her. As her gaze connected with Root, and she felt old, faint memories resurface in her mind. Rising to her feet, she formally announces her name as Alsace. Root and expressed their gratitude to her for rescuing him, then proceeded to share their names with him. The female knight explained to her the actions the witches had taken while she was held captive. The story moves back in time, showing the two sisters facing a golem that holds the female knight Alsace trapped inside its core. Turns to her sister, wanting to know the identity of the girl within the golem. Floria explained that she had discovered her in a village not far from here. Spots the familiar armor and quickly understands that the woman is a member of the Royal Capital Knights survey team. Ridiculed Floria, highlighting how little she knew beyond the art of crafting golems. Conveyed that the Royal Capital Knights represented the pride of humanity. The arrival of the knight suggested to everyone that the humans were preparing to launch an attack against them. Floria reacts with shock, while appears delighted by the suggestion, confidently promising to transform each person into one of her dolls. Cautioned her against making the mistake of underestimating the knights. Observes that their mother appears to be suffering. Moved toward the World Tree and saw their mother fused with the trunk, her words coming out in broken, unclear sounds. Makes fun of her. She notices that her mother can no longer handle the situation. Floria observes that, despite the world tree's healthy appearance on the surface, its core has started to decay. Her voice icy and detached, proposed leaving the withering tree behind and relocating to the royal capital to start anew. Floria gently brings up the vow they made together to their mother. Dismisses the notion of making a promise with a derisive scoff. In a concluding flashback, instructed her daughters to remain within the world tree's boundaries. She warned them that harming humans would only lead to strife, and such turmoil could grow into a powerful force that might one day destroy their very foundation. Floria's recollections lingered as she brought up the vow she and had made to their mother. She went on to clarify that their duty was to keep a constant watch over the world tree that grew in this region. They realized there was no way for them to escape. Feels overwhelmed by how dull and monotonous her life has become. Floria, overwhelmed by frustration, struck the world tree with force. Floria firmly believes that, as guardians of the world tree, they must steer clear of fights that can be avoided. She explains that this had only been the case while the world tree still thrived, suggesting that circumstances are now different. Floria, her expression twisted with wicked intent, unveiled a terrifying scheme. She intended to massacre everyone living in the royal capital, turning the devastated city into a new refuge for herself and her followers. Flashed a cunning smile as she accepted the plan, her eyes filled with admiration for her sister. At the same time, Alsace, the knight who had been captured, listened closely from within the golem's confines. She understood she needed to warn her companions about the scheme unfolding, yet found herself completely unable to move. Pointed out that with the arrival of the survey team, an attack by the royal capital knights was inevitable, so the group agreed to begin by taking out those knights first. Floria mentioned that she would require additional golems. As a result, they would need to gather additional humans who held magical abilities. They got ready to start. Floria suddenly recalls a crucial task. She must deal with the boy before doing anything else. Alsace concluded recounting the events, leaving everyone stunned by the revelation of the witch's intention to massacre the people of the capital and the alarming news that the world tree was decaying. The haired woman, clad in knightly armor, assessed the situation and realized that time was not on their side. Without hesitation, she made the swift decision to strike first, hoping to catch the witches off guard before they could prepare themselves. Root recognizes a chance to act, realizing that weakening state could work in her favor. Root moved ahead and requested that the knights allow both him and to join their group, promising that they would prove useful. After briefly looking over at Alsace, the haired knight nodded her approval and invited the group to join the mission. Root gazed at the towering world tree, worry flickering in Root's mind as he realized that Rona's fate was tied to the tree's health. Despite his fear that he might fail to help her if the tree died, determination welled up inside him, convincing him that a solution still existed and that he could find a way forward.